Okay, well, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
According to my clock, it's 9:01. We'll sing and dance here for a few minutes and give others a chance to join us. But I'd like to say welcome to you all. This is our third annual Community Garden Workshop. I'm Chris Mayer. I'm the director of our Fulton Center for Sustainability Studies at Wilson College. And we have had the pleasure to partner with First Summit Health and now WellSpan for the last 3 years to present a workshop for the community. This year, we're looking at this notion of homesteading. So looking for things you can do in your own backyard, in your own hometown. Sounds like a song there, but anyway, welcome. We're glad you're here. This is our first virtual workshop, however, so I beg your patience with us. This is new for us too. The first thing I'd like to do is say thank you to and introduce this super committee that's put this together for you all. So we'll go through the list here, and maybe you can wave or say hi, but I'd like to extend a sincere thank you to Diane Elsom. Barb Haupt is on here with us. Thank you, Barb. Jessica Larkin. Jess, are you here? I think I saw you earlier.
I am here, and thank you.
There's so many folks, I don't know where to Noelle Purdy.
I'm here.
She's our technology mastermind today, so yay. And also I'd like to just note that Noelle Purdy and Nikki Fickle, who is also from WellSpan, will be our session hosts for the breakout sessions too. So they're sort of the moderators for those sessions as well. So a couple housekeeping items here. We will be recording all of these sessions, so please know that. I think you had to grant permission, but know that this will be recorded. It is often in your best interest to put yourself on mute during the session speakers. Sometimes background noise becomes a little distracting for others. So if you could please put yourself on mute so the speakers will be able to fully share what they have to share, that would be great. For some of you, Zoom might be new. For those of you who this is old hat, I apologize. But I found if you put it on speaker view, it's a little less distracting for yourself. You can see the speaker fully. So you might want to try that. That's the little view icon up in the right-hand corner. We'd like to drop your questions in the chat box if you've not used that feature. So during the speaker sessions or during the keynote, please put your questions as you think of them in the chat box. That would be wonderful. And before I do a brief introduction of the speakers, I'd like to let you know that you all have the Zoom links. You can kind of move in and out of the breakout sessions if you wish. It won't disrupt the speakers, but know that if you can have it all. Sorry. With that, I'd like to introduce just real briefly our speakers, and then they will do a further introduction upon beginning their session. So we are so lucky to have with us today Jessy Varisano from Foot of the Mountain. Jessy's going to be our keynoter. We'll hear from her first. Then we'll head out to our breakout sessions. We have Jessica Larkin and Dan Emig from Fulton Farm. We're going to talk about our herb spiral project over there. And Kevin Patterson is going to talk with us. He's from Wild Purveyors and talking to us about foraging, what's already there in your own backyard. Our next set of breakout sessions will be Jessy and Lorenzo, again, from Foot of the Mountain. So eager to hear more about their cool homestead at the foot of the mountain. And then also Greg Hildebrand is with us this afternoon or this morning. He's going to be talking about bees and beekeeping and opportunities there. So interested to hear that. I haven't met Greg yet, so I'm looking forward to that. And then finally, we'll circle back and we will do a panel, kind of a wrap up to address any questions that you might have during the the whole session, or you can follow up. We don't want anybody to go away with a question if we can possibly help it, because we're all here to learn. So each of the speakers then will talk to you in their sessions about how they want to handle questions. Some folks might want them immediately, but some might want to keep them till the end. So I'll let that for them to give you the specifics of their workshop. So if there are no other questions for the good of the order, I am eager to hear from Jessy. I'm sure you all are too. So Jessy, thanks for being here, and kick us off.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. So my name is Jessy Varisano, and I want to thank you all for joining me today. I'm really excited and I'm sort of nervous, so bear with me. But I just wanted to kind of set this, put the setting down with you. I'm actually in our barn right now, which is like one of my favorite places to be. This window here, I don't know if you can see out it or not, but it is a picturesque view of our forest and of the mountain spring that runs through our farm. So I just kind of thought that would be a nice place to kind of have this little get together. Okay, now bear with me while I start sharing my screen with you. Okay. Okay. Did I do that right? Does everybody see that? Somebody give me a thumbs up. Does that look good?
It looks
All
good.
right, thank you. Okay, so my husband and I, we work Foot of the Mountain Farm with our 5 children. We also have 2 other individuals that come and help us plant and harvest and that sort of thing. We primarily grow produce, which is just vegetables, berries, small fruits, and herbs. We also have a small flock of chickens for eggs, and we also are going to be doing some meat chickens and turkeys just for ourselves and our family. We also tap maple trees right now. We are cooking maple syrup, so that's really exciting and really fun. We keep bees. We also do a lot of canning in the summer with all of our extra produce. We homeschool, we like to sew, and just so much more that I can't even possibly get into, but I'll touch on a few things if we go. If you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the question box. Zoom is not my best friend, so I don't know if I will see them, but somebody can just indicate to me that somebody has a question, and I'm more than happy to answer it for you, and don't feel bad about interrupting. That's totally fine. So we attend, oh, is this big over here? Do you see you guys? Do I need to make this smaller? Is that okay? This area over here?
It looks good.
Okay. All right. So we attend 2 farmers markets. One is in Carlisle called the Farmers on the Square. That one's on Wednesdays. And we also attend the North Square Farmers Market on Saturdays in Chambersburg. We've been doing those markets. North Square was our first market we ever attended, and that was 7 years ago this year. And then we've been going to Carlisle for several years now as well. We also have a community supported agriculture program, or a CSA, which is a share program where you buy a share upfront in the beginning of the season, and then you get a weekly box of produce every week from us from about May to October. And we also do a little half season that's not quite so long. If you have any questions on that, feel free to visit our website, but I'm not here to pitch to you, so let's keep going. Oh yes, so we go to farmers markets and we do have our CSA program. Our website is right here. You can always go back and look at that, but it's really simple, footofthemountainfarm.square.site. Okay, so what sets us apart from other farms? Why are we different? So we practice a type of farming called regenerative or restorative agriculture. And that focuses on improving the landscapes. A way that we like to describe ourselves is by calling ourselves stewards of the land. We're not just trying to work everything that we possibly can out of the ground and benefit as much as we can out of it. It's so much more than that. But one of the things that we do like to do is to create biodiversity. So why would we like to create biodiversity? Well, it gives us a chance to really look at nature and look at what our land has to offer us. That way we can get a better gauge on how we can meet its needs, not only our needs. We do this by using annuals, which are yearly plants, or perennials, which are plants that come back year after year, to create a diverse landscape. That's the key here. We don't want one crop or two crops or even 5 crops. You're just setting yourself up for disaster by taking the same nutrients from your soil all the time, but it also attracts the same insects that like the plants as well. So this way, we kind of take care of that problem just by planting different things. We also plant different types of plants because they have a symbiotic relationship called companion planting. That has become a buzzword lately, and I really like that because just the idea that plants can help each other is groundbreaking in today's world. So that is really, really important, the companion planting. As you can see, this is just a slide from up on top of our barn, just giving you one view. And I was trying to count earlier on how many different species of plants that we have planted in here, and it's just too much. It's too hard to even count. And this is just one little piece of what we do. If you look towards the top of the picture, you can see that there's a grassy area. That's actually our neighbor's yard, and we have a fence dividing it there. So when we first moved in here, our land looked just like that. It was a typical American lawn with a big shade tree. It was an ash tree that was dying, unfortunately, from the ash borers. And so we had to take that down, and we really started to embrace our gardening. So this is a project that has been going on for about 8 years now. So it went from a typical American yard to this in that time. Just here's another shot of it. Now that our fruit trees are maturing, can you see my pointer? I'm pointing to some fruit trees here. They're starting to mature and bear fruit, and they give lots of habitat for our birds, our wild birds, of course. And we also have, these are Jerusalem artichokes, and then more annual vegetables here. If you look back here, we have blueberry bushes, and we let wild medicinals grow, such as mullein. We sometimes have mints growing. These are more artichokes that just kind of gives us a privacy barrier from the road, and they're a great pollinator crop. The honeybees love them. So yeah, and this is our house tucked in right there. But we kind of live in just a little town out here in Concord, which is in Path Valley, if you know anything about Path Valley. So we just have this 1 acre lot that we stick all this into. And yeah, it's an ever-changing landscape with the seasons and with the years now. This is just showing you the sort of biodiversity we have. This is my daughter, Sonoma. She's just playing in the dirt there, but it just goes to show you how thick and dense we plant things and how many different species of different things there are. Like this flower right here is called an Alaskan poppy, another honeybee favorite, but you can also harvest the seeds and eat them as poppy seeds once they've had their time as a flower. But there's echinacea right here growing right there. We have sunflowers. We have other flowers in the background. There's some yarrow. Down low, you can see some basil right there growing. We have some chives, and then these are the kids' little potted plants that they like to do on the porch. And as you can see, we kind of try to bring that nature as close as we can to the house. And that's one of the permaculture principles. If you know anything about permaculture, we have kind of these circles that extend from the place that we live in with the most important things and the things that need the most care as close as they can be to us. And we do that because it really just makes it easier for us to attend it if it's right in front of our faces. And it's really true. I've really noticed that, especially if you have kids or anything else going on. The closer it is to you, the easier it is to access, the easier it is to care for. Okay, so another thing that we do is care for our waterways. Now, this is a project that we have going on that is a habitat pond, but we also use it to address some issues that we have with runoff. And we don't want any of our sediment or any of our compost that we put on our beds or anything to go into the waterways. So what this does is this area right here captures all of the runoff, and then it has to filter through the ground to get into this pond over here. These stalks growing here are cattails, and they are a great filter plant to sort of filter out anything that really the water does not want to have in it. And the cattails, they purify the water. So having marshes and that sort of thing is a really big deal in the outside world, outside of our farm, because it definitely helps take all those bad things out of the water before it gets to faster moving water or eventually to the ocean. So that's what we do. We also have some water from our barn. If we're not collecting it in totes, we have it directed to come right into here to do the same thing. So we want to capture as much water as we possibly can, and we don't want it to leave our land so quickly. So that's how we try to address any runoff issues that have become quite a problem with farms nowadays. So our soil health, we absolutely never use any synthetic chemicals, absolutely never. We never used it to get rid of the grass, never use it now for any sort of purpose. We never ever use synthetic chemicals, and we rarely use organic chemicals. The ones that we have used are something like neem oil, which is an essential oil. And that's just to take care of Japanese beetles, because we always seem to have them super bad. We are constantly building our soils. You can see on top of here, it's a mixture of mushroom compost that we have right now. And we're just laying it out on our beds nice and thick and keeping it nice and airy, because we want to give back that nutrients that we're always taking out by planting vegetables and that sort of thing. You can also see our farm is not 100% weed-free, but it is as weed-free as it's probably going to be. And I can get into that later if you have any questions on that, but it's just a prevention method of hoeing and that sort of thing. But if you stay on top of it, it's relatively easy to have a virtually weed-free garden. Okay, so our beds are unique. Like I said, our growing style is very unique. We have highly productive and efficient beds. This is the 30-inch bed model. So as you can see, this bed over here is a really good example. You can see how close, these are carrots, how close the rows are. And we do that so one, we can get more in a row, but two, because as these plants grow, now these aren't as far along as these, they grow up, and there might be some weeds that might come up in between the rows here, but as they grow, it creates a shady cover for the ground underneath, and it doesn't really allow those weeds to grow as much as they would otherwise. So just this little time period from when the plants just start growing to this, it dramatically reduces your weed pressure. So again, if you have any more questions on that, I'm happy to answer it, but I won't bore you with my nice weed prevention skills. Okay, so, I forgot to mention actually, when we are growing a lot of produce on 1 acre. Now last year we started renting more land. It's about 3 acres that we started. We're not nearly growing on that, but we started renting that. And prior to that, we were growing everything on our 1 acre. So we like to say what the standard organic farm grows on 7 acres, we can do it on 1 acre because of our density, the way that we plant things. And this method of farming, we can make tens of thousands of dollars on 1 acre. So versus a conventional farm or even an organic farm, it's like at least 7 times the amount of food that we can grow in those different ways. Okay, so what is homesteading? Okay, so this is just a definition. It's probably the best definition I could, whoops, I'm sorry. It's probably the best definition I could find off the internet. It was really hard to find anything that sort of jived with me. I can read it to you, but you guys are in the way. Let me see if I can move you. Okay, a lifestyle of self-sufficiency. It is characterized by subsistence, agriculture, home preservation of food, and may also involve the small-scale production of textiles, clothing, and craftwork for household use or for sale. Now that still doesn't quite jive with me, but it's the best I could find, so I'm hoping some of you can relate to it. And homesteading can look like many different things to many different people, and it's all based on geography. What I do is not going to be what somebody does living in Costa Rica or in Nepal or in, even in New York or even in Maine, something closer to us. And when you think of a homestead, maybe you think of a cabin out in the woods in Alaska that's off-grid, and maybe they're doing a lot of hunting and meat processing. Or maybe you're thinking of, a tropical farm that has avocados and pineapples and it's just lush all year round. But that's particular to anybody's specific geography. So this is why we do it this way, because that is what our land allows us to do. So a better definition that I can come up with is living off the land as much as possible. So you can make those connections and you can draw those lines on what works best for you. And sometimes you don't know what works best for you until you actually start getting into it. So the greatest advice that I always give everyone is just start doing it. Whether that's a potted plant on your porch, just growing 1 tomato plant, I would suggest sprinkling some basil seeds in there, but that's just my 2 cents. Or if you have a 100-acre farm and you're just planting some sugar maple trees or some walnut trees to cover the land. So I do want to emphasize, though, that homesteading can be, I said, hundreds of acres. It can be a living for you and your family, or it can just be growing a little patch of cucumbers that you can every year. And maybe you even give those cans as gifts to your friends and your family, and they will be so impressed by it because it is just such a feat to be able to grow and keep something alive. So I want to reiterate again, the important thing here is to take away that you have to learn your land, learn what resources you have, learn what weather you have, and also learn the plants that are already growing around you. So that brings me to this next topic. So in the definition, I read that homesteading involves some level of self-sufficiency. And I agree. I'm going to kind of get into what I think of homesteading now. You don't have to agree with me, but this is just where I'm at. And I think it's really magical, and I really want to share this with you. So our self-sufficiency, we also like to think of it as resilience. It is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties and toughness. Now, all homesteading has some sort of level of self-sufficiency and resilience. So let's say that you're able to grow and produce your own food, but maybe you can only grow tomatoes and cucumbers really well. So you can make tomato sauce maybe and have some nice tomato sandwiches, and you can grow cucumbers quickly, or you can grow them well, and you can can your pickles, but you can also can them for the winter, but that's maybe all you have, and maybe you only have an abundance for a short period of time. That's fine, but a bigger picture here is we want to think of the community that we can gather within a homesteading idea. If you're a part of a community that also has tangible skills, physical skills of homesteading, maybe your neighbor grows a lot of potatoes and you just are not good at potatoes. What if maybe your tomatoes that you were really good at growing, you traded with your neighbor? So now not only do you have tomatoes and cucumbers, but you have tomatoes, cucumbers, and potatoes. So that's something that is part of the resilience thing. You don't have to depend on yourself solely, meaning you don't have to be entirely self-sufficient yourself. But if you have this greater community to help you with that, that is more important, and that is what is going to drive you to more steps, or to being closer to your own self-sufficiency when you don't have to do everything. So this idea encompasses the physical skills that help us grow food and provide for our basic needs. But it also, we learn to kind of recover from problems that we have, because we have things that we're good at. We make mistakes along the way, and then we learn from them. So our resilience does grow when we continue to do this and we continue to work on the things that we're good at. Self-sufficiency is kind of the what is homesteading. It's doing these physical skills. But then we move on to something else that I like to call connection. So this is the why. Why do we homestead? So very basically, connection is the understanding where things come from and where they go. It's respecting the things that give you life and understanding that there's a process to things and a time for things. So when we do that, we realize that when you're growing plants and you're checking on them every day, you build a relationship with that plant, and you're curious about it. You're excited to see what is going to go on from there. So I want you to think of a connection that you had. Maybe it's from your childhood, because that always seems to really resonate with people. Maybe it was a fort in the woods that you really enjoyed, or a special bike ride, or a creek that you used to maybe play around in. It could even be your childhood home, or even like your grandmother's house, or something that was just very special to you. And it's not because it's anything fancy. It's just something that you had a relationship with and you built this connection with. Now I want you to take that and think about if somebody destroyed that, or it got ruined in the wind, or any sort of destruction that took place on that. You would feel more emotional about something that you're connected to, that you have a connection to, than if it were just something that you had no connection with at all. So that's what we like to do. We like to invite that connection to happen, these relationships to build. But it's not just with plants either. Now, I'd like to tell you a story of my children. They're outside most of the time in the summertime. And one day in the summertime, they noticed a bird that was flying sort of low, and it kept going through this little area that's like our packing and washing shed. It's called the carport. And it kept flying through it really fast and really low. And it really intrigued the kids, because we hadn't really seen many of those birds that year. So they just continued watching this bird as they were playing. And they noticed that it started to put mud on this light fixture that we have. It kind of has a ledge on it. So it was enough that they could just come and sit on it. And they were noticing it kept sticking mud on that. And they were so curious as to what is this bird doing? Where is it coming from? So this bird ended up being a barn swallow. And if you know anything about barn swallows, they make mud nests, and they do like to fly around pretty low, and they dart around. It's really cool to watch. So the children, they spent an entire day watching these birds and seeing where they were going. And here they were going to the mountain spring just by, just that runs through our farm. There's another little spring that bubbles out of the ground that's right next to the road. And the water is really slow moving, and it's kind of marshy, and it's kind of like a bog. It's really muddy. But Lorenzo, my husband, had just weed whacked it there because the grass was growing up really high, and it's our method so they don't come and spray on the side of the road. So we always try to keep it down because that's what everybody likes. So these barn swallows were taking the little pieces of grass that Lorenzo had weed whacked, and then grabbing some mud, flying back to our carport, our packing area, and sticking it on this light. And here they watched it all day long. And I think they were almost halfway through with the nest when the children realized that, oh, they're building a home. And that, ever since then, just because we're a farm, it was kind of annoying to have these birds darting about, and we debated back and forth about taking the nest down, and it just wasn't advantageous for us to have it there. But the more I thought about it and the more I saw that excitement in the children, was that this is something that's really important. It's something that would be totally invisible to people who did not care about it, or to people who just didn't take the time to really observe what was going on, in their land, at their home. So there was a potential for loss and destruction because of my blindness. But I learned that if I give them the chance to thrive, maybe I can get something out of that too. Just build a relationship with these animals and see where that goes. I was very curious about that. So it ended up being a great experience for the children. They laid eggs, they had their babies, they watched them grow and fly away. And it happens so quickly, it happens in the blink of an eye. But it made me realize that, so if this was invisible to me, if I was blind to it until this point, what other things out there are invisible to me, or am I blind to just because I'm not observing them? So there's endless experiences I have that I can go through with you. We know so many bullfrogs on our land, and this is one of the children holding a bullfrog because they know exactly where to find them. Now this snake is a garter snake, and it was so cool. I saw this guy in the grass one day eating this frog, as you can see his legs sticking out here. But then I realized that I know you frog right here. That's a leopard frog, and I know exactly where you live, and I've greeted you many times before. So I was a little sad to see this happen because we don't see so many leopard frogs. But again, it was that connection that I made with them, and I cared about him because I spent the time studying him, and I saw him when I would go out and tend the gardens. And when you have this connection with things, when you have this relationship with things, you don't want to destroy it, and you don't want to see it destroyed. Now, this snake eating the frog, I can understand that a lot more. But when people come in and blindly disrupt nature, that's what kind of hurts my heart a little bit. It hurts my spirit a little bit to see that happening. Another thing that we do is we feed the chickadees from our hands in the wintertime. That's another great activity you can do. We're kind of coming out of the winter season, so there's going to be other food for them to eat. But next winter, put that on your to-do list, is try to feed the chickadees. The kids also, they taught the hummingbirds how to drink a flower out of their hand. I was so surprised on this. I did not guide them through this at all. They would lay underneath the bee balm. And if you know anything about bee balm, it can get really tall, but the hummingbirds love it. So they would lay underneath and watch the hummingbirds zoom in and drink and zoom in and drink. And slowly but surely, they would grab a flower in their hand. And because the hummingbirds developed their relationship with the children, they knew that they weren't going to hurt them or do anything with them. They knew that they could come to that flower and be safe. So that was just a very moving moment on the farm. And I hope that demonstrates to you the type of connections that that you might not know exist out there. And when you spend time in nature, when you spend time on your land, this is the kind of thing that you can start learning and start caring for. Now, this is a shot of our new gardens up on the mountain, and I do want to show you right here growing. This is milkweed, and a lot of fields actually have milkweed growing wild. And if anybody knows anything about monarchs, we love monarchs around here, and we always let the milkweed grow as a weed. We don't cultivate it, just let it grow as it comes. Volunteers, as they say. Because there's always jars around our house of the children collecting the chrysalis or collecting the caterpillars. And every day they go up and pick another milkweed leaf and feed them just so they can develop that relationship with them. If you care about something, if you have a relationship with something, you're more likely to care for it and not to destroy it. And that's something that our earth needs right now. Okay, so that takes me to the next step, caretaking, okay? So being stewards of our land and communities, what does that mean? It means caring for these things that we have relationships for. And I also want to make note that that's not just our natural world, but that's our actual interactions that we have with each other. We don't want our communities to be connected because that's our social relationships that we have. And as humans, we're kind of interesting. We're very different, clearly, from many other things on this planet, or at least we like to think that. And we have these kind of closed social circles that kind of keep us separate from nature. And we have things like social media that keep us away from the natural world. And unfortunately, that makes people first care about their social health or the way that they appear to other people. And unfortunately, that's hurting our natural world because we don't just need relationships with people, we also need relationships with nature and with life. And unfortunately, it's really a conundrum because we get rewarded for those behaviors that we have with other people, and we don't quite get rewarded in the same way from nature until you really get into it. So it takes more of an investment, but I will argue with you that it is a greater reward that you get. So I truly do see this magic that our land has to offer for us. And I really want to emphasize that these skills, you have them too. You just need to practice them. Us as humans have been doing this for years. And maybe more recently in history, this is not something that has been in the mainstream, but I do feel like it's making a comeback. And I do want to give you the confidence and the faith that you can do it if you put the time into it. So ask yourself these questions. Would you like to be interested in seeing all of these invisible things in the world? Would you like to feed a bird out of your hand? Would you like to learn more about what's going on around you? My oldest daughter, Lena, she once said to me that there's a whole world out there and you would never know it. And she was, I think, 6 at the time. And I found that so moving. So let's connect all this, okay? So when we start practicing our physical skills by creating our homestead, we notice things that we had never seen before, and we experience events that were once invisible to us. We observe more and more connections being made between animals, but also between ourselves and nature. We observe our presence and its effects, which I would say my actions in my homestead are benefiting and producing an abundance. And that's why we caretake. So we can have life and we can have enough to share with nature and with ourselves. And we are very grateful to be able to do this. And I think that that's also very important, is to realize that all of this kind of depends on one another. And I'm grateful to be able to be a part of that circle. So that was my little journey on how and why we homestead. So I'm just going to take the rest of the time, I know we don't have much time left, is to just share some nice pictures with you. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to ask me. So this is just a photo of our backyard. I call this habitat creation because this is the old pond. We're putting in a new one currently, but we try to bring in wildlife, as many different animals as we can because, hey, that's nature and that's life and that's what I like to be a part of. We also do some permaculture skills. I know that's a buzzword, but yeah, we just try to incorporate as much as we can into our space, but doing it in a responsible way. Here's an example of one of our highly productive beds. If you know anything about permaculture, this is called a hugelkultur bed. So what this is, as you can see, these logs are lining the way to kind of hold up the soil that we've made, but buried underneath it are sticks and logs, and then we've covered it with mulch, and then we covered it with compost, and now we have this very lush and deep soil bed that is highly producing, excuse me, for us. But also, I want to show you that things don't have to be so cut and dry too. There is beauty in the homestead. I like to say, make your home your paradise. Don't spend thousands of dollars going on vacations or wherever it is that you like to go and spend your time. Make your backyard your paradise. So whenever you walk outside, that is your vacation. So I have a little fairy tale notion of it. I like to make things look magical, hence the little steps and the little hideaway things that maybe some people wouldn't notice, but they just really connect things for me. Don't forget to leave space for you to also live outside. So this is one of the many benches for us to kind of just chill out and hang out and enjoy the world around us. This is, we also, I forgot to mention earlier, we are no-till or minimal till. So we don't work the soil with big machines. It's all done by hand, which is just fine for us. And it allows us to grow more per square inch, basically, because we don't have to have a tractor come in. Now, don't forget to always be curious about things. It's really easy if you have the chance to observe children in nature. They really have that curiosity, you know, right in the forefront of their brain. And I like to try to do that too. It really intrigues me and gets my brain working in different ways that it wouldn't normally work. So this is just their little fort of Jerusalem artichokes. And unfortunately, this is that ash tree that had died from the ash forest, but we did leave the stump as a remembrance to it. And this is just my son having a good time with, that's Broccoli, the chicken. And this is Lorenzo holding Jacob. This duck loves me, but if you know anything about duck love, it's very violent and he scares me, but he passed away a few summers ago. So at the time, I was kind of relieved to not have an enemy around, but I've really come to miss him now. But these are our gardens up top. Here are some of our chickens in a movable house. So they go around, they're about ready. They tore up this ground. We were trying to have them help us expand the gardens. We really wanted them to tear up the ground. So we'll move them to another spot with grass and keep them there and have them dig and tear it up and do their chicken thing there. Here are some more pictures of our beds. I know I'm running short on time, so I'm just going to go through these quickly. Here's some beautiful lettuce. I just can't help myself. It's just beautiful. Here's some of our honeybees that we kept. We currently don't have honeybees. We will be getting some from Greg this year. Yay. But this is just some of our past bees and yeah, our honey and our honeycomb. This is our maple syrup that we are going through right now. I just canned this, oh, it was earlier this week. I can't remember, but it's so good. I do the last batch on the stove inside just to cook it down the last like 10 minutes. And boy, it makes the whole house smell wonderful. It is just great. I also do a lot of baking with sourdough. So this is just a picture of my very active, bubbly sourdough starter. If you need any tips or questions about sourdough, feel free to ask me at some point. You can always email me. We do some foraging too. So here's some mushrooms and some sumac berries. And with sumac berries, you can make kind of a lemonade with that. But foraging is just as much a part of Homestead as gardening, or at least it can be. And here's just a little surprise that we found in our garden one day. We threw down a bunch of ash bark as mulch, and the next year it gave back to us. So that was really special and magical, another connection that you can make. And that's all. Thank you for joining me. And if anybody ever has anybody saying anything negative to them or wondering why they're spending so much time in your yard, just think, don't heed the naysayers. It's actually a quote I heard from Arnold Schwarzenegger, but I really believe that. Don't worry about what people have to say that's negative. Don't worry about them at all. You just keep doing what you feel is right. Thank you, everyone. If you have questions, I can take questions. Other than that, I really hope that you have a nice day exploring and learning about all different things about homesteading. Thank you.
Jessy, thank you. That was just amazing. And what a wonderful setup for our next series of breakout sessions. Keep your questions if you haven't gotten them answered. We'll talk to Jessy at the end in the panel. But for now, I'm going to say thanks to everyone for tuning into that most excellent keynote. Next up is the Herb Spiral with Danny, Emma and Jessica Larkin. You have the Zoom link for that. And also, we're going to learn more about foraging with cabin. You have the Zoom link for that one. So enjoy your breakout sessions, and we will all meet together as a group back at about 11:30 to wrap up any questions you all have. So thanks again, and see you at a breakout session.